I just want to say good afternoon, good evening, whatever part of the world you're in. We appreciate the fact that you're here with us today. And I'm Cheryl Neeser, and I'm going to be your host tonight, which means I get to introduce our guest and also try not to put you all to sleep before he gets going and wakes you up with my little spiel here. But really do want to thank everyone who's joined us. Those that are new, maybe tonight's the first time that you've been to one of our events, but also those others that have come back more than once or repeatedly, or maybe it's been every month since January when we started. So we're still young, but we're growing, and really appreciate the fact that as a community, you're interested in continuing to come to our events, share your thoughts, understand that we're trying to give people opportunities globally to, really build this community and share knowledge and share thoughts on the things that you want that are going to help you in your current position, whether you're new to Agile or whether you're experienced and you want something that it's like a little farther down the line, right? So we are really wanting to focus not so much on just frameworks and processes, but that on people, and the mindset and the focus with our values and our principles is really all around people. So we really appreciate that you are here. And our leadership committee, and I've mentioned this in the past, I am just one person out of like 7, and we are looking for more. If anyone is interested, just let anyone of the leadership team know. So Julie Rue from Royal Bank of Canada, we have, and she's here today. This is great. Craig Schumann, who's with Three Bridge and also Orfeo Consulting. Angie Agresto, who's with Agresto Consulting and Training. Say one of our people, I want to call him Dr. Strange, but he's really Mark Strange, and he's with Lucid, and he's kind of like at large right now, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't contribute ideas and help us get things lined up for future events. So, and I think I forgot someone. We've got Chris Wickett, our wonderful Chris Wickett from Improving, as Cheryl Anderson. Cheryl number 1 from Improving, who's been just an awesome producer for us all the way along. And then it's probably just me from Improving as well. So let us know what you want for future topics. We've got a couple things stacked up, and we've got some other things in the work, from like a housekeeping perspective. We're really working on trying to ensure that you know who we are and that you have an opportunity to connect with us. We just started a LinkedIn site, so you can look us up and request to join. And that is where the wonderful Chris Wickett's presentation is finally, and that is where we will be sharing links to our YouTube videos from past performances of our fabulous guests. And let me see, what else? Okay, thanks to Fallon for, Fargo Area Learning Network for joining us and being great partners as well. So really appreciate it. So tonight our guest is Blake McMillan. And I already shared my funny little story, but I'm really happy to be able to introduce him. He's a professional Scrum trainer. And as you might have heard before, at the very beginning, he's a professional Kanban trainer with ProKanban.org. He's a principal consultant with Improving, and he's really focused on Agile and Scrum and Kanban coaching. But what's really great about how he's used his many years of experience is that he's really very dedicated to sharing his knowledge and making it a fun experience for all of us. So I am really happy that he volunteered to talk through Kanban tonight. And he shares all the time. And so I wasn't too worried when Cheryl Anderson had already kind of gotten things in the works to be able to say, okay, could you do it on the 14th of October? And he very quickly said, yep, I can do that. Make it 5 o'clock. We're in. So nice. With that, I will say that we can get going and see the wonderful talents of Blake McMillan.
All right. Thank you so much, Cheryl. I am going to go ahead and share my screen, which is going to make sure that I you're seeing now the improving it's what we're due, Kanban Uncomplicated. Can I get some thumbs up? All right, we're seeing that. Cool. All right. Well, let's get started. So yeah, the title of this is Kanban Uncomplicated, definition of workflow. When I first thought I was using Kanban, I wasn't. And I'll show you an example of that as we go through this together. A little bit about improving. If you guys don't know, we do training and coaching. That's the section that I'm in. We also do consulting services, application development, and recruiting services. So as far as me, Cheryl already kind of went through this, so I won't spend too long here. I am a professional Scrum trainer with Scrum.org, professional Kanban trainer with ProKanban.org. And I also have a website called soloscrum.com. And I would invite everybody, connect with me on LinkedIn. Love to be part of your Agile and Scrum and Kanban journey. So if you want to connect with me, there's that information. And then also how you could connect with me on Twitter as well. If you're concerned, Blake, I don't want to follow you on Twitter because I don't want to get spammed with like multiple posts a day. Safe. I'm like the safest Twitter follow because like I rarely tweet. I'm trying to get better at it though. I am. You can see a list of companies I've supported down there at the bottom. And let's get right to this. All right. So first off, whenever we talk about Kanban, what I want to do is I want to get us focused on a source. And the source that I look to is the Kanban guide. The Kanban guide was published in 2020 of December, and it was published by a group of folks who later formed prokanban.org. I really like this group of people. I really like the people that have been drawn to ProKanban. What they really focus on is creating a very inclusive, very accepting, very supportive environment for people to learn Kanban. And I think that's a good thing. And I really like their approach. One of the things that we kind of talked about a little bit is the Applying Professional Kanban course. This is the first course that was offered by ProKanban. And the assessment that goes with that is the Professional Kanban 1. And Jennifer Bullock and I, we are the course stewards for the Applying Professional Kanban course. And we're always looking to see how we can make it better, more engaging, where the learning objectives land better. And so that's what we're working on, is trying to make this course as good as it can be. If you are interested in taking the Applying Professional Kanban, we do have a class coming up on the 9th and the 10th. We still get the early bird special going for that. So if you're interested in checking that out, you definitely can. So we'll start off with, why should we even do this? Like, why Kanban? What's it good for? So we'll go down this list here. Optimizing the flow of value. That's kind of the big super selling point of Kanban. Managing work with a visual pull-based system. As a coach, one of the kind of like the things that I would do like almost all the time when I start working with teams is I see that they're not really visualizing their work. And so when you don't visualize your work, sometimes really terrible things can happen. I remember this was, before I was doing, any kind of Scrum Master stuff. But I was actually a director at a company. And when I got hired on, the VP told me, hey, yeah, you're gonna, when you come in, you're gonna fire a dude probably within your first month. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. Why are you saying that? And he's like, this guy, he's terrible. And I'm like, look, if you want him fired, just go ahead and fire him before I get there. Cause I gotta let you know, I'm not just gonna fire someone. I'm going to try to learn about what's going on with them. And like, they're going to start with a clean slate with me. And he's like, oh, fine, go ahead and start with your clean slate. And so like, I got to know this person, and I got to find out how are you doing work? And here's what I found out. The way that this person got work was from so many different sources. One source was Jira. So we could get a Jira ticket assigned to him. Another way was he could get an email. Another way was he could get a phone call. Another way was he could get someone that would just come by and put a Post-it or a sticky note on his monitor. That was considered a way to engage him for work. Another way it could happen is someone could just come by his desk and be like, hey, I need you to start this right now. And so this guy had all of this work that was going on, but we didn't see it. And so we instituted this this policy called, I call it the NTNT, no ticket, no taco. And so everything had to have a JIRA ticket. Now, when I did this, our client said, look, I'm not going to get in JIRA and I'm never going to create a ticket. I'm like, hey, no problem. We'll create it for you. And she's like, oh, okay, fine. And I'll tell you, the very first time we had our review, and this, this is a client, right? So it's a client review. She was furious. She's like, I don't even know why they brought you in. You broke everything. You're a disaster. Like, she said that to me. She said, you're a disaster. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm like, oh, what? Like, what's making you say these things? And what she said was, before you came in here, we had like 20 JIRA tickets a month. After 1 month of you being here, we have 85 tickets. And I was like, yeah, about that. You always had 85 tickets. You just couldn't see them. And so that was one of the things that we did, was we brought this into our field of vision. And so turns out this guy who was like, oh, he's no good, he's not doing any work, this guy was amazing. He was absolutely amazing. And once we were able to visualize the work, once we were able to see the work and also prioritize the work, then all of a sudden, this dude was a rock star. And everyone was like, oh man, he's so great. And so I'm so glad that we were able to do that, because otherwise this guy could have gotten fired just because people didn't know, like, what he was doing, what was going on. So that's been something that I've kind of made part of my toolkit, is let's make sure that we can see the work that's going on. Other reasons we want to do Kanban, continuous improvement. Also, Kanban's really good in multiple situations. I told you guys I'm a Scrum trainer and I'm a Kanban trainer. With Scrum, where we focus is the world of the complex. If you're doing the same stuff, you do it the same way and it never changes, that's where I'm sometimes like, well, I don't know if Scrum's really your deal, right? Because if you don't need to discover, if you don't need to collaborate to build a solution, it's just like, hey, yeah, we're going to do the same thing that we do all the time over and over again. And not really, maybe Scrum's not the best play. But this is where Kanban, it can work in a complex situation. It can work in a more simple situation where there's no variables. They're just about focusing in on the work. So that's one of the things that I like about Kanban and why I think we should use it.
Blake,
I do want to go back.
We have a question from Jamie about why was the reason given why he should be fired?
Because he wasn't getting stuff done. And the reason he wasn't getting stuff done, spoiler alert, work in progress. We'll get there. Don't you worry. We're going to get to that. But yeah, he was starting stuff all the time. But I'll do a callback to that when we get there, because work in progress, it's something we're going to talk about. All right, cool. So one of the things I want to go back to is that first bullet point about optimizing the flow of value. So in the Kanban guide, what we do is we look at, what does that mean when we say optimize the flow of value? How do we make that something that we can really get into? Well, one of the things we talk about is effectiveness and predictability. I look at these two things, like these are things that customers really care about, right? When we talk about effectiveness, from a customer standpoint, I want what I want when I want it. Has anyone ever heard that from your customers? Is it just me? I want what I want when I want it, right? Yeah. So like many times, like our customers, they're just concerned that like, I want stuff as soon as I can, as soon as possible. That's why we have companies like FedEx, right? Like I'm not satisfied waiting for a week. I want it here tomorrow. And now, like, Amazon's gotten all amazing. And like, they say, hey, you want it today? And then you're like, yes, I do. And then you're like, oh, but it's $15. But with Kanban, one of the ways we focus on value is providing what our customers want when they want it. And then making that predictable, right? Making it where the way that we do things is in a way so that our customers, they come to know, oh, this is what I can expect, right? Because sometimes what can cause dissatisfaction is the gap between what I expect and what you're actually capable of doing. And so this is another thing that Kanban brings to us, is ways for us to measure the work that we do so that we can provide better predictions. Now, the thing that I think kind of balances these two things on optimizing the flow of value is also efficiency. And this is where we start to think about, hey, are we using our resources, like our time, our equipment, our dollars, are we using it in a way that's good? Because I feel like these kind of create like this triangle that kind of pulls on each other, because we could be super efficient, but then not be very effective. One of the examples that I've seen for this that I think is really good is when you show, I don't know the traffic patterns very well in Minnesota, but I do know them in Los Angeles. And it's the 405 freeway. The 405 freeway is a very efficient freeway. And what I mean by that is it is constantly bumper to bumper traffic. Matter of fact, I saw a video when there was some fires going on in Southern California, and someone said, "Oh yeah, here's this fire. It's on the 405 freeway." And I said, that can't be possible. And they're like, "Oh, why do you say that?" I'm like, "There's the traffic's moving." And they're like, "Wait, what?" I'm like, "Yeah, the 405, it doesn't move. You just sit there." But that's because every bit of space is covered by cars. So very efficient use of that pavement, but you don't get where you want to go when you want to go there. And that means it's not really effective. By the way, Cheryl's, if people have questions and you want to just jump in, I'm totally cool with that. People, if you want to take yourselves off and mute, ask questions, I'm good with that too. I was telling Cheryl when we got started, today I've been spending like all day doing mural stuff. So interactions, I want them. I like them. That's what I do when I train, is I get to interact with people. So if you got questions, hit me with them. All right. So why should we use Kanban? This is the part about value, right? Is doing this. And so how do we do it? What do we do with Kanban? Well, with Kanban, we've got 3 practices: defining and visualizing the workflow, actively managing items in a workflow, and then improving the workflow. What we're going to focus on with our time together is defining and visualizing the workflow. Now, when I first delivered this talk, I delivered it to an internal group of improvers, and I started talking about, like, the little what is it, the marketing blurb we use for this thing, and it said something like, if you're using a whiteboard and blue painter's tape, that's not Kanban. And I actually got some feedback from my fellow improvers, like, man, dude, that kind of sounds a little harsh. And I'm like, oh, you know why it sounded harsh? Because people didn't know that's what I did. I thought I was doing Kanban, right? There it is. There's the blue painter's tape. There's the different columns. I'm like, yeah, man, I'm totally doing Kanban. Check it out. And you can see my name's there. And then there's my email address and phone number and all that kind of stuff. So here it is. Here's me doing it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing Kanban, but I wasn't. And I wasn't even defining and visualizing the workflow all the way. And so that's what we're going to get into a little bit, right? And so here's the 6 required elements for a definition of workflow. As soon as I look at this, I'm thinking,
can I interrupt for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
We have another question, and maybe this is a good time or maybe not, but Jamie has asked, what are your thoughts around not using Kanban until you've matured with Scrum?
If you're focused on trying to get Scrum right, if you're focused on the accountabilities, if you're focused on, getting the most out of you, the most you can out of the events, and you're really trying to help people understand the value of each one of the artifacts, that's good stuff. That's great. And if that's the change that you're focused on and you really can't divert yourself to do any more changes, that's fine. But what I would say is, one of the things that I've seen in my life as a Scrum Master is there's some of these Kanban practices that if you apply them in a Scrum context, it can be beautiful.
Magic.
Did that answer your question?
Jamie?
So, but I'll let you continue to see if you circle back, or
Okay, cool.
towards the end I might bring it up again. So
Sounds good. Sounds good. But to give you the super short answer, no, I don't think that you have to be awesome at Scrum before you implement some practices in Kanban. I think they can go hand in hand. Matter of fact, I think some of these things that I may share with you, if you're Scrum Masters, if you're helping teams get better at Scrum, some of the things that you may learn today may be able to help you. Maybe something that you observe is not going great with the team, and you could even suggest some small changes and experiments to try based on what you may learn here today. All right, so as soon as I pull this slide up, I'm just like, you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to read all that stuff to you. Too long, didn't read. I'm not expecting you to read it too. It'd take too long, right? So what I want to do is, instead of just reading a bunch of text to you, I want us to kind of explore something together. I want us to explore a definition of work. That's what DOW stands for, using something that probably most of us are familiar with, which is a sub sandwich shop, or if I'm getting it correctly, hoagie. Did I do it? Minnesota people, did I do it? They're looking at me like, dude, why are you trying? What? Just stop it.
Hoagies are only for meatball sandwiches.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't know. All right. So like they do that here at this place. And I'll tell you guys something funny. As I was creating this talk, I tried to just get these pictures off the internet, right? Because that's what we do, right? We just go and try to snatch stuff off of Google, but I couldn't find any. And then people started saying, oh, you got to make sure that it's like common use. And I'm like, you know what? Forget that. And so I just went out with my camera. I went and talked to the manager and said, hey, can I take some pictures of the restaurant? She says, hold on a second. And they made everything look all beautiful and perfect. And so thank you to Jersey Mike's for giving me some good pictures to share with you guys. All right. So this is Jersey Mike's restaurant near me. Our workflow, define individual units of value. So you'll see on a couple of these, I put, don't skip the step. The reason why you don't want to skip this step is one of that I'll see happen to people as they're saying, hey, we're going to start doing Kanban, is they just start putting a bunch of tasks up there. Like they actually used Kanban just for tasks instead of tracking the movement of something that's valuable, right? And so this is where you start to look and say, okay, well, what value does this task have? Well, this task really doesn't have any value on its own, but if we get these 9 tasks done, then this thing is done. Okay, well, that's the thing we really want to focus on. We want to focus on the stuff that's valuable, like the value that we're trying to get out of our Kanban system through our team, right? And so this is what we want to do, is we want to focus in on that value. And then once we focus in on what's valuable, then we can start optimizing. And so that's where we look and we see, all right, hey, I recognize those icons. Does anybody remember what that little green one, the customer's head with the time on it? Anybody remember what that one is? Customers want what they want when they want it. Do we remember what that was about?
Effectiveness.
Yeah, that's right, Vladimir. Effectiveness, exactly. Customers want what they want, and that's how we measure effectiveness. Then we see that one that's kind of like, hey, is the arrow going to go up? Is it going to go down? We don't know. It feels like that might be unpredictable. What is that one about? I know that was kind of the soft bump. Boop, like, hey, all right, someone come up there and spike it. It's about yes, predictability. Pretend like I heard it. And then the third one, we've got our effectiveness, we've got our predictability, and then they pull against this other one that says we don't want to spend too much money because we want to make sure that we're what? That's what those little blue cogs, everything working together.
Efficiency.
What's that one about? Efficiency. Thank you. Was that, who said that one?
Shelley.
Thanks, Shelley. Yes, efficiency. And so when we have a good idea of what's value, in our Kanban system, that will help us start associating them with, are we giving the customers what they want? Are we
Like,
giving it to them in a way that is making it so that we know, hey, it's not like one time it takes a year, another time it takes 50 seconds. And then is this process something that's sustainable because it's efficient? Do we have a question?
yeah, we have one question that's
Yeah,
particular to this section. Aren't all the
cool.
mid-step tasks valuable in a way?
Maybe, maybe not. What I look at is like, it's okay for us to track the stuff that needs to get done. There's nothing wrong with that. That's good. But the way that we're going to define our workflow should be focused on there's something that is valuable. Now, what needs to happen to this in order for it to turn from a cool idea into something that's valuable? Does that make sense?
Can I ask you a more specific question, please?
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
So if I'm slicing tomatoes, isn't that valuable?
What if you throw those tomatoes out?
Well, the tomatoes will be available. Is not a valuable value.
Well, I would say that the tomatoes could be part of creating value, but as far as slicing the tomatoes by themselves, I don't know. What do you guys
Why
think?
not? Why not?
Are you selling tomato slices?
Yes.
Yeah,
they
if you're
include-
selling tomato slices, then that is absolutely super valuable. Yeah, because that's your product, right? Stick with me here, because I think as we see some of the other parts of how we're going to define our workflow, it may start to kind of connect with the different work steps that will take us into value. Good?
So you understand why I'm asking this question, right?
I don't think I understand
Okay.
why you're asking this question.
Okay, I'm asking this question because if the development team is saying my work of creating this small API is a value and I'm creating this as a user story, and this is what goes through the Kanban, that's the fundamental question.
Mhm.
Do we consider this a value or not? Because this is about how we build a Kanban,
Sure.
because it's a completely different workflow.
Mhm. Yeah, whenever and it's funny because I actually coached a team that like they were the API team, and they really struggled with like showing the value of what they do. And so what ended up happening for this team was they just sort of changed their perspective and started to look at, it's not about the API, it's about that there's someone that needs data. And what we do is we make it so that that data is available. And so like, does their actual work change? Not really. They're still doing API work, but it was about maybe pulling back a level and saying, well, why are we doing this API work? Why do we need to do this? Because this customer wants to know something. Cool. What do they get out of knowing this? I don't know. We just do it. That's where we haven't gone really far enough or deep enough into understanding the value of what it is that we do. I think there's value in the information, but just the API, maybe.
So I had a similar experience as Blake.
Mhm.
And then they actually took it one step further and they started promoting it like a product, like they did like any other product. Like they went and kind of sold it like they were selling sliced tomatoes or something like that. So it wasn't, so once they started to realize that they had a product, they actually started to act like they were selling a product. So they started to act more like a company selling a product.
Nice. All right, let's keep going. So we are going to define our individual units of value. The reason why is because that's going to help us really focus in on those different aspects of value: effectiveness, predictability, and efficiency. Another one is define start and finish points in your workflow. So we need to start, when is it that in our workflow, when is it that work has started? And then how do we know when it's going to end? By getting these things defined in our workflow, we can start to track the items that go through our workflow. And then that's how we can calculate a thing called cycle time. Cycle time is, okay, we've started it and now we finished it. How long, what's the amount of time that's elapsed there? And that is our cycle time. So let's look at that in the context of our sub shop here. And the start of our workflow is when they will ask us, so what can we get started for you today? And they're going to be listening and taking the order. And then how do we know when we're done? All right, thanks for coming in today. And guess what happened right before that? That's right, I paid them. And so they got paid. And so that was a clear exchange of value, including the sliced tomatoes, lad, including those sliced tomatoes, because I like tomatoes on my sub sandwich. And so like, that's going to be part of what's going to make me happy as a customer. So this is the start point and the end point for this scenario that we're talking through. What can I get started as our start? Thanks for coming in. That's the end. We're done. So we're done with our workflow. Our next one, define work in progress states in your workflow. And so my Scrum Masters, you saw your answer in here on that first bullet points. How many work in progress states should we have in our workflow? Well, everyone's saying it. Yeah, I know you're just on mute. It depends. Yeah, it depends, right? That's the best Scrum Master answer for any question. It depends, right? And so it's going to depend on the context. It's going to depend on the work that we do. Now, here's the thing. If we have too few, then we may not see how the work is flowing through the system. If we have too many, that's how we can many times hide work in progress, and it can just make it where just running our Kanban system is a beatdown. There was a lady I started supporting as a coach, and she had she had a system that appeared to look like a Kanban board, and it had 52 work in progress states. And when I saw it, like, yes, I'm seeing some of the reactions. Like I had that same reaction. I'm like, wow. And as we started looking at some of the items, I found an item in her workflow that had been there for 462 days. And I was like, is this valuable? Because if so, if this is valuable, I want to meet the person who has the patience of Job, who is just like, one of these days, I'll get that thing I asked for. And I'm like, does the person still work here? Like, do you check that every once in a while? Because sometimes people don't last at a company for 462 days. Anyway, we want to define our work in progress state. So what does it look like if we were to have too few? Let's look at it in our context. If we had too few, maybe it would look at like take an order, make a sandwich, pay for it. That might be okay though. Maybe that's okay. But if we're trying to optimize like the sandwich making part, maybe that's where we're thinking that like, gosh, it just seems like making our sandwiches, it takes too long. That might not give us enough granularity to find out where we're slow, right? But if we have too many, then it may get crazy. That's where we have take order, slice the bread, slice or grill the meat, prep the bread, add the veggies, including tomatoes, and add the oil, add the vinegar, add the spices, cut the sandwich back. Like, whoa, that's a lot of steps. And if I was actually, moving a card through these work steps, I would probably be one of those developers that says, I feel like I spend more time moving cards than I do making sandwiches. This is killing me, right? So then, we go to the Goldilocks thing. One's too cold, one's too hot. Here's the one that's in the middle. Take an order, prep the meat, add the toppings, prep for carry out, complete payment. Now, sometimes what will help us determine how many work in progress states is maybe it's just our physical setting. And so in this next one, before we talk about explicit policies, I'll show you this. When I came up with, when I started thinking about that workflow, I thought about this section up here, and I just realized that you can't see what I'm pointing at. So let me use this deal. So right here, there is a section of the counter that's for slicing the meat. And there's also a section back here for grilling the meat or something. So really, there's sort of like a work state that's going to happen here because work is happening here. Doesn't matter how many employees you have. And then there's this place right here for toppings. And so this is how the work flows. It flows from taking the order to the first thing is like getting bread ready, getting meat ready. And then once that stuff happens, then it goes into the toppings. And that's where you get to say, hey, I want some lettuce and some tomatoes. And oh, you know what? I want extra tomatoes because I love tomatoes. And then we get that done. And then we go down to this part of the work, which is, okay, now that that's done, we're going to wrap it up or cut it, wrap it up. Maybe they do the cut after the wrap. Think about it. And then I'm going to put it into a bag, right? I'm going to make sure that this is ready to go. And then we get that payment and then out you go. Well, that could help us define those different work in progress states. This is one of those things, explicit policies about how work items flow. You see, don't skip this step. Why? Because this is one of those steps that we like to skip. We skip this thing. And this is what really helps us understand how work flows through our system. Now, I also want to say that this should be something that as we learn, we should feel free to change it. The people that are the Kanban system members, they should feel like, hey, if I start to realize that how I'm doing this, it just doesn't make sense, then do an experiment and change it. Let me show you some examples. So we've got our deal here where the way that we know it's ready to pass from this section right here is the meat on the bread. If the meat's on the bread, it's ready to go. Then it can go to toppings complete. How do we know if everything's okay with the toppings? This was the easiest one, but they're looking at the customer. Everything look okay? And that's one of the beauties about this one is if you don't have tomatoes on your sandwich, whose fault is it? Guys making a sandwich? No. Yes, that's right. You see that transparent piece of glass there. If you don't tell them and then they're not going to put it on there. Now at this place, they got this thing called Mike's Way, which is like the way that you get a sandwich. I'm just telling you. And that is all the veggies with oil and vinegar and oregano and salt and pepper. I said not the salt and pepper because my wife, she's not all about the salting. So this is how we know if the toppings are complete. We get that confirmation from our customer, and then we're going to find out from them. Hey, are you going to eat this here, or are you going to take it to go? If we take it to go, we stick it in the bag. If not, we stick it on a tray, and then we get paid. Right. So this is something that if you don't have this in your Kanban system, this is something that you need to focus on, is creating those explicit policies about when something can leave a part of the workflow. Next thing we got to look at is our work in progress. This was that thing that was killing that guy who had to deal with JIRA tickets and phone calls and emails and sticky notes and people coming to his desk. There was all of these different ways to start work. And there's actually a very, like, I call it like kind of like a downward spiral. What happens is you start having a very long cycle time when you have lots of new work in progress starting. And so what happens is people get frustrated because it's not effective. Your system's not effective. They're not getting what they want when they want it. And so what they do is they start putting their order in and say, I need you to start this right now. This is really, really important, right? And so what happens? We've just added more work in progress to the system, which what does that do? It ends up increasing our cycle time. And so it's this terrible, like downward spiral as people say, no, start it now. Okay, I guess I'll start a new thing. But what we really need to do if we want to focus on that effectiveness is we need to limit our work in progress. And that's also what makes it so that we have a pull-based system. So let's look at that in the context of our sandwich thing here. So maybe just because of the space considerations, maybe we can only prep.
Oops, got muted again.
Somehow I got muted.
Yeah.
Sorry,
All
my
right,
fault.
cool. No worries. Cheryl's like, oh, dude, so much with the talking. We got to slow you down, mister. Take a breath, Blake.
Just everybody's hungry. And so they're like, we want
yes,
food.
that's right. I didn't even think about that. Everybody's like, oh man, after this thing, I got to go get a sandwich.
Yep.
So yeah. So when we look at this, we say, okay, maybe just based on physical constraints, we can only have 4 sandwiches that are getting prepped for me at any one time. Really, there's only one that's going to be doing the slicing. Now, if you order 2 of the same sandwiches, technically you could probably do 2, and then maybe you have 2 back there on the grill. So we set our work in progress limit based on our capacity and say, yeah, it's 4. Notice it's not about people. We could have an army of 30 people back there, but based on these space constraints, we couldn't have too many people in that same area, right? Maybe we could have someone working the grill, someone slicing the meat, but really it's just about like, what is our space capable of, right? Then add the toppings. We could go with 1 because that way we're having that one-on-one interaction. That way we're not getting confused by 2 people talking to us at the same time. So maybe we put that work in progress limit at 1 for adding our toppings, and then prep for carry out. Maybe we could do more than 1, but maybe we started off at 1 because we keep our work in progress limits low. That way we can reduce our cycle times, which increases how much work we get to done as opposed to starting.
Blake, there's another question.
Yes.
Can there be multiple outs in a Kanban if different stakeholder has the ability to sign off, or should there be an ultimate end?
Let me see if I understand this question. Are we saying, is it possible to skip a part of the workflow? Is that the question?
I think it's
am I hearing that?
exit the workflow earlier without completing all of the steps.
Maybe. Yeah, absolutely. So let's just use our context. What if I get a meatball sub? Guess what I need on that meatball sub? Nothing except for the meatballs, right? Once you put the cheese and the meatballs on there, you better stop talking about tomatoes and lettuce and onions and all that mess. All you're going to do is mess up my meatball sub, aka hoagie. And so what I want you to do is I want you to skip all that and just go straight there. But it could still pass through that add toppings. It's just going to pass through it like in like 0 seconds, right? Because we're just going to say, yep, it's done. And it'll go straight to prep for carry out. Did that answer the question? Or are we thinking that there's like, how, if not, tell me how multiple exits might look.
And that was Billy. He said my interpretation of the question was correct.
Okay, cool.
And maybe this is related to the situation when we have different things to do. For example, once team decides to create a piece of functionality, that's one workflow, and then the next item there in the backlog to create documentation, and well, that's completely different workflow. But if they have one board, then there will be different output or a different exit. So how to cope with the this variety of different things that we're doing, which require different actions.
Yeah, and this is where we get into that Scrum Master place of it depends. Everyone's workflow is going to be different. One of the exercises I really like that we do in the Applying Professional Kanban class is we build a workflow in class. We build a workflow and we use a common theme for the first workflow that we build. And what's so interesting about doing it that way is we'll have 3 or 4 teams all building a workflow for the same exact business, doing the same exact thing. And we see these different workflows come about. And there's not wrong ones and right ones. There's just a workflow. And then one of the things that we explore together is how are we going to know if this workflow is any good? We're going to know if this workflow is any good if it's capturing the work that needs to get done and that work is flowing through it. And if it's not, then that's where we would be called on to improve our workflow. If anyone thinks that they're going to get their workflow right the first time, probably won't. But that's okay, because if the expectation is that you're going to get it right the first time, well, based on what? Based on who? because everything that I've experienced is we take a shot at visualizing our work and then we realize we don't actually do that. We want to do this, but we don't. And we learn from visualizing our work.
And I'm a vegetarian, so you're going to skip the meat prep on mine.
There you go. There you
And
go.
but
Yeah.
most people
They got
aren't.
that veggie sandwich.
Yeah,
Yeah,
most
they got
people
the veggie
aren't.
sandwich and they just go out and they get the green peppers. Like I think that's what they substitute in there. Or maybe they have like a veggie burger kind of thing. These guys don't. They just do like the peppers. They add in some peppers there. But yeah, like the meat might be them just prepping the bread, prepping the meat. All right, so that's our work in progress. Let me make sure I hit each one of these things. When should we change them? This is something that comes up quite a bit. One of the things that I think is important, and it comes from our previous slide, and let me see if I can go backwards, explicit policies. What are we going to do when we violate our WIP limits? Because that's a thing that can happen. We should try to figure that out ahead of time, because what we should not do is when we say, hey, we need to do two sandwiches at once with the toppings, because this person here is they're getting two of the same sandwiches, so let's just do them both at the same time. We shouldn't say, okay, well, let's add our work in progress limit to 2 for add toppings then, because then what ends up happening is we stop actually limiting our work in progress. And that's what actually makes it so that we can create that pull system. We say, hey, I can't take any more work because I'm working on these toppings right now on this sandwich. Okay, cool, I'm done. What's the next sandwich? It's this one. I'll pull it in. I'll start doing the toppings. So when we should change them is when we recognize through looking at our workflow, looking at the metrics that we capture, is maybe we've got more capacity in this part of our workflow, or maybe we're starting to see a bottleneck, right? So when we should change them should be because we're seeing patterns and some trends, and we're being mindful of how will changing these work in progress limits affect our workflow. Because the more work in progress we have, the less effective we're going to be, because more work in progress means that we do things slower. It affects our cycle time.
Like
All right,
another
cool. Wanted to
question.
make sure I clicked that one. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it okay to have multiple Kanban boards based on the item built?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely have multiple Kanban boards. And another thing is you can have Kanban boards within Kanban boards. And that's basically where you have a Kanban board that has multiple stop and start and finish times, right? Because you may have a Kanban board that's looking at like, hey, this is when a request is made by a customer. A customer makes a request. Now, what could happen is that customer request is denied. Yeah, interesting. We're not going to do it, right? And so it ends before it even makes it into the next board. But if it gets to the done part and gets moved to the next board, okay, cool. This is an idea we want to pursue, and there's a customer who wants it. Awesome. So now what are we going to do? We're going to build it. We're going to test it. We're going to make sure it does what we think it does. And then we're going to implement it, right? And then, okay, is it done? Maybe from a certain perspective, but then we may want to follow up with that customer. Maybe this is a whole separate board where we follow up with the customer and said, hey, you requested this. Check this out. What do you think? We get feedback. That may then start that whole entire cycle again. But there could be multiple boards that are actually in that big, massive board that is from customer request all the way to customer feedback. Customer likes it, customer doesn't like it.
Like one other
Sure.
question.
Sure.
Should there be one column per work center unless a particular work center has a very long cycle time, so needs the individual steps reported to have visibility?
And the Scrum Master answer to that question is,
It depends.
it depends. Yeah, I can't tell you. I don't know what you do. I don't know your context. But here's the thing. I want you to go back to that thing when we started talking about our work in progress states. If you have too many of them, what you will have is you will have a lot of work in progress. If you have a lot of work in progress, stuff's going to go so slow. Your customers are going to be angry. They're going to be like, this system sucks. It's so unpredictable. Sometimes I get stuff fast, sometimes it's slow. Oh, this is so frustrating. If that's happening, if your customers are not satisfied, it could be because of the capacity of the team. It could also be because you're not limiting your work in progress. And so you're starting a bunch of things. And maybe you have a system that's so complex that you're hiding all of this work in progress in different states. Let's go to the next thing. I'm looking at the time and going, eek. So I want to make sure we talk about our service level expectation. So service level expectation, this is one of those ones. I should have it on here. Don't skip this step. If you don't have the service level expectation, you're not doing Kanban, because this service level expectation is how you communicate to your customers. Here's what our system does based on data. And so what you look at is a service level expectation is going to communicate a percentage and a time. So for our context, 85% of the items are done in 5 minutes. Now, before you have data, what are you going to do? You're just going to do your best. And real quick, the difference between, sometimes people get these two things confused. Service level expectation based on data whenever we can. Service level, the service level agreement, that's based on hopes and dreams, and that, oh, I hope we can do this, and if we don't, we're going to get in trouble. That shouldn't be what a service level expectation is, though. Service level expectation, that is communicating, here's what we're capable of. Now, I'll say this in this context: if our service level expectation based on our cycle time data was 30 minutes, would that be okay with our customers? What do you guys think? Ever walk into a sub shop and stand there for 30 minutes? Yeah, once, maybe. If I'm patient and I'm hungry and it looks good, maybe I'll do it once. But unless it's amazingly good, I wouldn't come back to a sub shop if there was a 30-minute service level expectation, because that means 85% of the time you're waiting that long. But what that service level expectation does is it helps us be more predictable. Now, what I want to do is I want us to build this together. Let's do this real quick. And then we can open it up for questions, because I think we're pretty close to the end. So first, we're going to define our units of value. So here's our sandwich orders, right? Here's our sandwich orders. You notice number 13, that's the original. It's good. Cold cuts, the Italian sub, it's my favorite. That's why I have it in there multiple times. So we define our units of value. Maybe it's sandwiches for our workflow. Then what we're going to do is we're going to define the start and finish points, right? We already talked about this, taking the order. Hey, what can I get started for you? And thanks for coming in today, right? That's how we know when we're done. And so then between these 2 points is our defined work in progress states. And so what we try to do is we try to not have too many, but enough we might be able to see if there was some bottlenecks, right? So we've got our prep meat, add toppings, prep and pay. And so bam, we're done, right? We've got our Kanban board. We don't need anything else. No. I was hoping I'd see some of those shaking heads. Come on, Blake, don't play us that way. Yes, we need our explicit policies. We need to do that, because this is one of the things that a lot of people skip. And so now we say, okay, what does it look like for us to move from take order into prepping the meat? Maybe it's just a confirmation of order. It could be something really quick, right? Just like, okay, so we're going to get a number 13. You're going to get it Mike's way on white. Cool. Let's get started. Now I'm going to start prepping the meat. Then we're going to get the customer confirmation on our add toppings. This is our explicit flow policies. How do we know when something's ready to move from one work in progress state to the next? Then our work in progress controls. How are we going to limit the work in progress? There we go. Take the order. We can only talk to one person at a time. Prepping the meat. Maybe we've got 4. Add toppings, prep and pay. Those are all the work in progress limits. This is what makes it so that we can pull. We're ready to do prep and pay. Once we've got that customer gone, now I can take the next one that's got all the toppings on it, get it prepped, get someone to pay for it. Finally, now we're done, right? We're done. Our workflow is complete. We've done everything, right? No. Service level expectation. We got to have this thing, right? We got to have this. This is what makes it where we're able to talk about predictability. And so we use our cycle time data as we're collecting this. How long did that sandwich take? 4 minutes. Cool. How long did that sandwich take? 4 minutes. Cool. 6 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 6 minutes. That informs us to the predictability of our system. And this is what we look at when we look at some of our metrics is we'll look at, and this is not what this talk is about. We're not going to get into metrics on this one, but this is how we would look at our cycle time, and we would start to see, are we running a predictable system or not, right? So what this was our defining and visualizing the workflow. This content taken many times straight out of the Kanban guide. If you want to know more, then you can go to the kanbanguides.org. You can actually read the Kanban guide, go to prokanban.org, or you could also join me in the upcoming Applying a Professional Kanban on November 9th and 10th, because I'd love to have you there. Any more questions? Because look at that, right within the time box. Yes, feels good.
Good job.
We did have some more questions.
Let's hit them.
Sorry, I need to get my chat reopened. Figure out where we left off. So if you have multiple Kanban boards, how do you prioritize the work?
Okay, so when I talked about having multiple Kanban boards for a team, what I was thinking of is a linear, like multiple boards, meaning that we say, okay, there's an intake, there's where we do the work, then maybe there's a customer validation. But yeah, you bring up a really good question. If I'm a team member and I work on 3 different teams and they all have different boards, how do I know which one I want to work on? Great question. Something that you should look into, something that you should figure out. As much as possible, what we want people to do is we want them to know like where to focus their time. If their time's split across a lot of different areas, I'd be concerned about that. So I don't have a quick answer for you.
Another
Ideally,
question.
we would, yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, ideally, we want it to be simple for people. That's one of the things that I look at with a Kanban board is I want to make sure that we know what's next. What's next? Because that's really what we care about the most. What's next? What should I do next? This is over in the Scrum world. This is why we have a product owner, right? We have that person that says, here is the ordered list of what we want to do, and it's back. And so in a Kanban system, hopefully we've got some way to do it. In the example that I showed you, it's just who's next in line, right? That's easy. And so we don't really have another Kanban system, though we could have one for cleaning. We could have one for when there's no customers, we go over to the cleaning board and we pick a cleaning thing, and there's value in having a clean restaurant. So maybe that's something. And we just know that whenever we have customers here, we're going to do this Kanban system. When customers aren't here, we go do this Kanban system. Hey, we came up with an example.
Another question that was fairly early on. What are your thoughts on Kanban integration with PM tools such as Jira?
Here's my thing about tools. I think tools can be beautiful. Tools can be amazing. What I get concerned about with tools is when people say, oh yeah, you can't do that because of, and then insert the name of the tool name. When you have to conform the way you work to a tool, I don't like that as much, because what I want teams to be able to do is, hey, we're going to change the way that we work dynamically as we learn more about how we work. If that tool becomes an impediment or a roadblock, I don't want to like it. But as long as it's enabling us, and like, I'm just going to tell you, there's some charts that I don't like to draw on my own. And if I can get a tool to do it, I want it. I want it a lot. Cumulative flow diagram, that's an example. Now the throughput chart, I love that one. I'll draw that one every day. Matter of fact, I'll take that one. From now on, I got that one. That one's easy. That's 1 dot a week, maybe 1 dot every 2 weeks, right? Throughput, not a problem. But some of these other ones, I don't want to draw them if I don't have to. I want a system to do it.
Another question. So Domino's order tracker is the apex of food Kanban. I guess
Is that a statement? Because I'll say, cool, awesome. It's the apex predator. It's our velociraptor of Kanban. Cool. It's funny that you mentioned that though, because that's actually a context that I've talked about. Kanban is a pizza delivery. And when you think about an SLE for pizza delivery, Domino's, they're the ones who sold that SLE to their people. Actually, it was kind of more of an SLA, wasn't it? Because they said, we're going to get it there within 30 minutes, or it's free. Yeah. So,
Vlad had a question that I don't recall exactly what the context was, so he might need to add to it. How do you find the balance between too many and too few? Need example from IT. And I think that
yeah,
was going back to the workflow columns.
the work in progress states.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's experimentation. I think it's going to be experimentation. And I've seen it, the accordion thing happen, right? We start off and we're like, hey, we've got all these different parts, all these different things that we want to make sure that we do. And so you build this big 14 item Kanban board. And then you realize, oh my gosh, we're doing so much, there's so much work in progress. We're not getting done because we keep flipping back in between these things. That's why I say, do not skip the step of determining what's valuable. Because when you determine what's valuable, that's how you can focus on, okay, well, if this is what's valuable, what needs to happen to it? How does it turn from an idea into something that someone uses? And then this is where I really want the team who's doing the work to be engaged in the creation of the workflow. Like, I don't think it's a good thing when we say, all right, everybody, I'm a Kanban master. And because of that, here's your workflow. And then people are like, oh, this sucks. This isn't what we do. Like, I don't want that. What I want to do is I want to collaborate with people and talk to them about like, hey, let's start visualizing your workflow. That's another reason why maybe when you start out, maybe you're not doing it in a tool, because if it makes it hard to change because it's in a tool, not so great. Because with painter's tape, you can just go whoosh, and put some more up there. Right now, once you spend some time on it, then you can maybe put it into a tool to help kind of create some automation. That could be good. But
so in other words, Blake, just to clarify, since I asked this question, you're saying that if the team has a lot of steps to do and they realize they're doing all of this, then you can analyze this and say which of the steps provide little value and then get rid of them. I mean, why this accordion is happening? Is it because team figures out how to simplify the flow, or because team is just saying like, oh, well, this is just one person doing all this 15 steps, so we will just combine it on one. I mean, what is the criteria? You said that too many hides whip. So what is the golden middle here, a sweet spot when we say it doesn't hide whip, but it gives enough us for analysis?
Yeah, and so like I'm going to go back to this example. Am I sharing my screen still?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Want to make sure. So the add veggies, add oil and vinegar and spices. So maybe that level of granularity is not important. And so we could just say add toppings. That's kind of what I've seen when I've worked with teams is we had too much granularity and we said, you know what? We don't really need to have that level of granularity because really things only spend that long and add oil and vinegar and spices. So maybe it's not important to have that level of granularity. And so that's where we would smush those into add toppings.
So you cannot optimize it anymore. So it's already kind of like optimum. And you say, okay, we don't work here. We can combine it as one, right?
Yeah, that might be something that you do if you've got too many work in progress states. And you look and say, hey, is there a way to generalize this? Because a lot of times what I see people do is I see them make a Kanban system or Kanban board based on people, right? So, okay, it's got to go to the developers. There's a developer column. Then it's got to go to the testers, and there's a tester column. And then it's going to go to the implementers, and there's an implementer column. And so what happens is you start having the Kanban system reflect what people do, as opposed to focusing on the work. And sometimes like that, it's kind of a subtle shift when you just start thinking about, okay, well, what do we have to do with our work? Well, we've got to understand it, right? We've got to make sure that we're on the same page. All right, that might look like requirements. That might look like, something similar to that, making sure that we're all on the same page, taking our order. And then we've got to assemble something. We got to do some sort of work. And then maybe there's some sort of check that we do. Like you can make it more generic And then it can apply to a lot of different types of work that'll flow through. Where you get your granularity though is in that next step, which is the explicit policies about how work items flow. How do I know it's ready to move from here to here? Because we've got the customer sign off and everybody's good with what we're going to build. How do I know when I can go into a validation step? Well, because maybe all of this stuff is complete and now it's ready for, you know, some type of validation step, because we wouldn't want to start the validation step if it wasn't done, right? Does that help?
Thank you so much.
All right, awesome.
I led a team one time on a server operating system upgrade, put in way too much detail. And so then the team stopped moving their things from one status to the next. So they would just go from, you know, okay, this is in the to-do and now it's done.
Yes.
Or it would go into
and
one,
that's the
column.
team rebelling against administrative burden, right? And that's one of the other things about having lots of work in progress states that people are like, oh, I'm going to be going up there every 5 minutes. I don't want to do that. You know, when it's done, we'll just move to done. And so, yeah, that's another part of it is if the people who are using the system say there's too much, I spend too much time moving these darn cards around, then ask them, well, what should it be?
And they created it. So they, you know, it's certainly possible that your team may create something that's not good.
Yes. And then change it. If it's not working for you, if you hate it, don't stick with it. Change it.
Yep.
What else?
Ooh, looks like we got some more new messages. Lynn says, nice job, Blake. Excited to take your Kanban class.
What up, Lynn?
Jeff says, divide by milestones instead of tasks.
Divide by milestones instead of tasks. Okay.
Is it the answer to the previous comment?
Oh, sorry. You might be right. I was going the wrong way. I heard that not being able to plan for iteration sprints is not a good reason to adopt Kanban. What are your thoughts on that? Also, what if work is blocked in one of the stages? What would you recommend? Or would you recommend a blocked / wait stage?
Yeah, that is also like when I talk about like some of the mistakes I've made in the Kanban world, a blocked column, that is one. That's a mistake. I do think it's important to be able to show when work is blocked, because when work is blocked, what we should do is focus on how do we get it unblocked? What do we need to do? That's important. But when we have a blocked column, it's another way to hide WIP. It's also another way to get yourself really confused, because when you go from it's a 5-step work in progress, and this is blocked, so I take it out and I put it here in blocked, and then it's not blocked anymore. I'm like, oh, where was that again? Was it here? Was it here? Was it here? Like you introduced that confusion. At least that's what happened to us. The having an indicator for blocked work is a great way to manage your work. It's a great tactic. You know, put something on there like a star, put a color. I remember we used to even have colors that we would use to show when something was work in progress for too long, right? That we would focus in on it. But yeah, I definitely would not recommend a blocked column, but do definitely find a way to show blocked work.
Okay, another question. If there is a team of 5 developers, 2 QAs with cycle time of 85% work done in 15 days, what are the different ways to use this data and in what circumstances?
So the number of people of different skill sets I'm less concerned about, and more I'm concerned about the work, right? And so if we have work that's flowing through the system, that's what we're after. And what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to look and see, does our service level expectation, which is based on cycle time data, does this actually make our customers happy? Are they happy with what, like I asked for it here, and then what was the service level expectation that was shared in the example?
85% of work done in 15 days.
Okay, how are your customers with that? Are they excited? Are they happy with that? Because like, let me just tell you, if you come from the waterfall world and you tell people we get stuff done in 15 days, they're gonna lose their minds. They're gonna be like, oh, what? We don't have to wait 6 months to get something? I love it, right? If you're working with people that are like in the cutting edge kind of, DevOps mentality, they're like, oh, 15 days? Hold on, wait, 15 days, really? Well, what kind of stuff is going through there? And like, are you guys using automation at all? Like, then they may be looking and thinking, gosh, we should be able to get something done inside of a week, shouldn't we? And so it's going to depend on your context.
Another question. Oops, sorry, it just hopped on me. If there's a team of, oh wait, sorry, we just did that one. Is it recommended to just put the blocked card back in the backlog?
Oh, that's no. like that's the big reason why I say don't use a blocked column. Like you want the blocked item to be where it is, right? So let's go back to our sandwich example. Let me pull that up real quick. Let's look at our.
Let's say we run out of tomatoes. What happens?
Yeah,
with
great.
sandwich?
So let me ask you, where would we? Oh, hang on, I can't find this thing. There it is. Where would we discover that we've run out of tomatoes?
At the tomato station.
At
Work
the
in
add
progress.
toppings.
Topping
Exactly.
station.
Now, here's the thing. This is another neat thing is we can see our tomatoes. As we start to get about halfway through the tomatoes, that may be when we do a call out and say, hey, we're about halfway out of tomatoes. And so when there's a lull in our customers, then we go from our sandwich making Kanban board to our food prep Kanban board, which is always subordinate to our customer board. And we say, okay, look, I'm going to put a card up here that says sliced tomatoes, right? And then we say, cool, all right, we're going to slice these tomatoes. All right, we got a whole new bin of tomatoes that are ready for our customers. So maybe that's a way we could utilize multiple boards. We have our customer board, then we have our non-customer board. Our non-customer board supports delivering value for our customers. And in that sense, slicing those tomatoes, that's good because it's getting us ready to serve our customers.
I've warned you that slicing tomatoes is a value.
You just won me over, Vlad. I'm like, yeah, I'm on team sliced tomatoes now. It sounds good.
Right.
I think that's all the questions we had, unless somebody else
Awesome.
has one that if I missed one, feel free to jump in and ask now, or if you have come up with something else.
So in the restaurant example,
Mhm.
or any other service when we get sandwiches through the window, it's usually a queue of customers. What this means that the customers are seeing another customer in front of them. So if they run out of tomatoes, it's not like the whole queue is getting rearranged. So essentially, the people who serve the customers, they don't have even power to rearrange the customers because it's an absolutely independent queue. Okay, so there's nothing like that in IT. It's the opposite. So in IT, we do rearrange the customers, we do rearrange the releases and stuff. And that messes us up essentially because we start to get on too many things to do. So how do we deal with that?
I mean, your work in progress.
Yeah. What essentially we do, okay, we run out of tomatoes. Okay, back to cashier, wait there. When tomatoes are here, we'll continue doing your work. And in the meantime, we'll serve other customers and we'll continue this queue. And that one customer is getting blocked. And then we run out of something else. And that, the problems pile up essentially.
So that's a way to handle it, right? Like that is a way to handle it, is drive forward, right? We've all had that happen when we get to the restaurant. Maybe there's some going with the fries, and they say, okay, I'm taking your money. They take our money. Now we're in, right? And they said, by the way, the fries are going to be a little slow. Can you pull forward? And we're like, oh, well, I guess I paid already. So fine. And they move forward, right? And then we see another person move forward, then another person move forward, then another person move forward. And like, yeah, they keep on bringing that work in progress.
Right.
Someone, based on the conversation that we've had, the situation that Vlad just said, where we say we're out of tomatoes,
Right.
what's another thing that we could do besides telling people, hey, go stand by the cash register? What's another strategy we could do?
So in IT, nobody jump on slicing tomatoes. They continue doing meat. They continue taking orders. They continue wrapping things, or I mean, they just stay busy. Essentially, there is a developer, and developer keep developing what they develop, and they start to do things that are not so valuable. They start to switch contexts, taking another project or whatever. But there is no culture of saying like, okay, we ran out of tomatoes, we all go to slice tomatoes now.
Yeah. I mean, you just said it, right? Well, if we don't have tomatoes and it's causing us, and it's caused this sandwich to stop in the process, slice some tomatoes. Like get some tomato slice. Now and just so you know, this is a can of worms that I'm going to crack it. We're going to crack it and we're going to put it right back, because it's 6:18 and I just showed people who haven't eaten yet a bunch of pictures of delicious sandwich stuff. So we're going to crack this can. We're just going to look at it and we're going to close it back up again. One of the problems that we deal with in large corporations is for decades, what they have done is they have done projects through specialization. And so what they're used to doing is we organize people into specialized silos, and then we pass work through those specialized silos with the intent that our goal is to make sure that the people in the specialized silos are busy.
Correct.
They are being used efficiently. Hold on, wait for it, because I'm just going to crack it open. I'm going to put it back down. But the thing is, though, keeping people efficiently used isn't actually valuable. What's valuable is getting stuff done. And so if we find a way to focus on getting stuff done, as opposed to keeping specialists busy, that's another way. And it's a way that I would suggest. So that was it. Vlad, that was your peek. Look at those worms. Right back down.
Don't close it yet, because there's another thing. This guy who's slicing tomatoes is gonna say, oh, hold on, guys. You don't know how to slice tomatoes. Only I know how to do this.
Ooh. So if we have someone who is hoarding information and doesn't teach other people how to slice tomatoes, do we have a problem?
Yep.
Well, that's everywhere.
Yeah, we have a problem. So what should we do? We deal with our problems.
Just hire another tomato slicer.
Oh, yes. That is exactly what the people who are trying to sell you tomato slicers will say. Vlad, you just need us to bring on another tomato slicer. And then you also want to have a lettuce specialist. And then you also want to, we can keep going with that. Yeah, I would rather have people focus on value, though. Have them focus on getting stuff done, because it's only when we get something done that we can get paid or we can get some feedback.
That's
Vlad,
okay,
I want to point out one other thing. So there is a work in progress or process on every column. So in the case of a development column, they can't take in any more work until something leaves their column. Mm-hmm. And it can't leave their column until the next person is ready to work on it.
That's that pull-based system. Thanks for adding that, Cheryl.
Yeah, so the developers are going to get frustrated that they can't pull in any new work. So they need to figure out how to help further down the chain to make it so they can go back to doing the work that they want to do.
And what happens in the old way of work is, and I dealt with this, and like, these are good people. Like, I'm not going to tell you these are bad people. These are good people who just got used to working a certain way. There was a guy that was a mobile developer, and he was a specialist. He was a Xamarin developer, or even more specialized, right? And so I started talking to him about like, hey, you know, the folks that are kind of like QA specialists, they could use some help in creating some automated test scripts. And he looked at me and he says, Blake, I'm a Xamarin developer. And I was like, okay, does that mean that you don't know how to write automation? And oh, then I saw his face change a different color. I know how to write automation, like, but my specialty is Xamarin development for mobile apps. And so what he wanted to do whenever things would get blocked in QA is like, oh yeah, sucks for you, QA. And then they'd go get something new off the product backlog. And so what they would do is they'd just keep piling stuff up. And are we producing value? Nope. Because guess what? Xamarin code worth zero. It's not worth anything. What's worth something is some functionality in a mobile app that's going to help a customer. That's valuable. And then only sometimes, because sometimes we produce something and we're like, it works perfectly. And we give it to our customers and they're like, oh, meh. And we're like, wait, what? Meh? Really? We thought this was going to be awesome. We thought you guys are going to love this. Not so great.
And Lynn suggests time for some pair programming. So, you know, teach the other people how to cut the tomatoes by working with them. And Jeff also says, read the Phoenix project about worker Brent, who's the constraint in the process because he's the only one who knows how to do a lot of the steps.
Was it Brent? Is that the character?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yep.
So that's why it is so dangerous to say that slicing tomato is a product. Because once you declare that, you start to have people like Xamarin and say Xamarin is a product. And that's it. I'm just producing more and more. It's just it becomes local optimization.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you're selling tomato slices, tomatoes are not really a product.
Right. It's actually a crucial question. The step number one that you said, I wish we talk more about this because it's not really frivolously defined. Because depending on how we define that one, we will have a disaster or we have a good system that is getting self-optimizing system.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have 5 minutes left in our time box. Is there anything else that I missed or other questions? And Vlad always has a bunch of good questions, so thanks, Vlad.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely appreciative of the engagement. I was telling the Cheryls before we got started, today was a non-training day for me, and I was just like focused on creating murals for a upcoming class and tweaking stuff because I'm always trying to tweak stuff, make stuff better. And like that kind of stuff for me, it is not what I love to do. I love to do this. And so this was my little treat at the end of the day where I'm just sitting here by myself, listening to music, doing murals as I finally get to interact with some folks. So thank you so much, everybody. I'm very grateful for this time I got to have with you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Blake, for presenting and answering everyone's questions.
That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe